The carnival had a reputation. Every few years it would roll into town, and strange things would happen. People would disappear, rumors would spread, and then, just as quickly, the carnival would vanish, leaving behind only questions. I'd heard the stories growing up, but I never believed them. Not until I went myself. It was late when I arrived. The crowds had thinned and the carnival was winding down. But one tent, set apart from the rest, still had lights glowing inside. A sign out front read, "The Carnival's Final Act, a show you'll never forget." Curiosity got the best of me, so I paid the price and stepped inside. The tent was small and dimly lit, with a few rows of seats facing a small stage. A handful of people sat scattered throughout, their faces half hidden in the shadows. I took a seat near the front, feeling a strange unease settle over me. The lights dimmed and the tent fell silent. From behind the curtain, a figure emerged. A tall man dressed in a tattered ringmaster's outfit, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. He didn't speak, just raised his hands and the show began. At first, it seemed like any other carnival act, tricks and illusions that were mildly entertaining. But as the performance continued, something felt off. The acts grew darker, more disturbing. The performers, acrobats, clowns, and magicians, moved with a strange, jerky precision, their faces expressionless. It was as if they were being controlled by unseen strings. Then the ringmaster called for volunteers. The audience hesitated, but one by one, people started to raise their hands. Each volunteer was brought up on stage, where they would participate in a trick, a disappearing act, a levitation, or something equally as impossible. But something was wrong. Every time a volunteer stepped off the stage, they seemed different, paler, their eyes dull and unfocused. I watched as they returned to their seats, but their movements were robotic, almost lifeless. When the ringmaster called for the final volunteer, no one moved. The air was thick with fear, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But then, to my horror, I felt my hand rise into the air, as if it had a will of its own. The ringmaster's eyes locked onto mine, and I felt an icy dread creep over me. He smiled and beckoned me to the stage. My legs carried me forward against my will, and I climbed the steps, my body trembling. As I stood on the stage, the ringmaster whispered in my ear, his breath cold against my skin. "This is the final act," he said. "One that will stay with you forever." He stepped back, and the stage lights brightened, blinding me for a moment. When my vision cleared, I saw the audience staring at me, their eyes wide and empty. I tried to speak, to move, but I was frozen in place. The ringmaster began his final trick, a transformation act, he called it. As he spoke, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, like I was being pulled from my body. My vision blurred, and I saw myself on stage, standing rigid as the ringmaster continued his incantation. Then, with a sharp snap, everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my seat. The tent was empty, the stage dark. I tried to stand, but my body felt heavy, unresponsive. I looked down at my hands and saw that they weren't my hands anymore. They were pale, lifeless, like the hands of the volunteers who had gone before me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped, my mind awake, but my body no longer my own. I realized then that the show had never ended. I was the final act, an unwilling performer in a never-ending carnival of horrors. As the lights faded and the tent grew colder, I understood the truth. The carnival didn't just take people, it transformed them, trapping their souls in an eternal performance, forever bound to the ringmaster's will. And now I was one of them. The carnival had been in town for a week, and everyone was talking about it. But there was one attraction that no one dared to ride, the old carousel. It sat at the far edge of the carnival grounds, its paint peeling, and its horses frozen in twisted, lifelike expressions of terror. But curiosity got the best of me. That night I approached the carousel alone. The lights flickered on as I neared, casting eerie shadows across the ground. A strange metallic tune began to play, one that seemed to vibrate through my bones. Against my better judgment, I climbed onto one of the horses. Its eyes, wide and glassy, seemed to follow me as I sat down. The carousel began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The world around me blurred and the music grew louder, more distorted. I tried to get off, but the horse's reins tightened around my hands, trapping me in place. I looked around and saw the other horses turning their heads toward me, their eyes now glowing with an unnatural light. As the carousel picked up speed, the scenery around me changed. The carnival was gone, replaced by a dark, endless landscape. The air grew cold, and the sky above twisted into a black void. The horses around me began to move on their own, their hooves clattering on the wooden platform as they neighed and snorted, no longer bound by the carousel's mechanics. One by one, the horses broke free, galloping into the darkness. I screamed, pulling at the reins that held me, but they only tightened further, cutting into my skin. The carousel spun faster and faster until I felt like I would be torn apart. Then, everything stopped. I was alone in a barren, desolate field, the carousel's music still echoing faintly in the distance. The horse beneath me was now just a skeletal frame, its flesh rotted away, and the reins were nothing but rusted chains. I stumbled off, my legs weak, and looked around for any sign of the carnival, but there was nothing. No lights, no sounds, just endless emptiness. I began to walk, but every step felt like it was taking me further away from the world I knew. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was no longer in the world I had come from. The carousel had taken me somewhere else, somewhere dark and unforgiving. And as I wandered that barren land, I heard the distant sound of hooves behind me, growing closer with every passing second. I've always hated clowns. There's something about their painted smiles and oversized shoes that unnerves me. So when my friends dared me to go into the fun house, I was hesitant. But I didn't want to seem like a coward. The fun house was a chaotic blend of flashing lights, distorted music, and unsettling laughter. I navigated through the maze of twisting corridors, trying to ignore the creepy clown figures that lined the walls. But the further I went, the more lifelike they seemed, their painted eyes following me. As I turned a corner, I came face to face with one of the clowns. It was taller than the others, its makeup more sinister. It was blocking the way, its red eyes locked on mine. I tried to move around it, but it reached out, its gloved hand grabbing my arm with surprising strength. I yanked free and ran, but every turn led me to another clown. They were all moving now, slowly closing in on me, their laughter echoing off the walls. My heart pounded as I realized I was trapped. I could feel their eyes on me, could hear their footsteps as they followed. I stumbled into a dead-end room, the walls covered in mirrors. In each reflection, I saw the clowns behind me, their grins wide and menacing. They were closing in, their laughter growing louder, more maniacal. I backed into the center of the room, my eyes darting between the reflections, trying to find a way out. Then the mirror started to ripple like water. My reflection twisted and warped until it wasn't me anymore. It was a clown, its face painted in bright colors, its eyes glowing with malice. I watched in horror as my reflection grinned at me, then stepped out of the mirror. The room spun as the clown grabbed me, pulling me into the glass. I fought back, but my body felt heavy, unresponsive. I screamed as I was pulled through the mirror, my voice muffled by the glass. I found myself in a world of twisted reflections, surrounded by endless mirrors. The clowns were there too, their laughter echoing in my ears. I looked down at my hands and saw the white gloves, the oversized shoes. I touched my face and felt the painted smile. I was one of them now, trapped in the funhouse forever, doomed to haunt the mirrors until someone else took my place. The Ferris wheel was the tallest attraction at the carnival, its lights visible from miles away. It had always been my favorite ride, offering a peaceful view of the chaotic world below. But this time, something was different. I boarded the Ferris wheel alone, eager for a moment of calm. The operator, a strange old man with a crooked smile, gave me a nod as he pulled the lever. The wheel began to turn, slowly lifting me above the noise of the carnival. As I reached the top, the wheel stopped. I didn't mind at first. I enjoyed the view. But then I noticed something odd. The lights of the carnival were flickering, and the sounds below were fading, replaced by an eerie silence. I tried to signal the operator, but he was gone. The entire carnival had vanished, leaving me suspended in the air above an empty field. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped, the Ferris wheel now creaking ominously in the wind. Suddenly, the wheel jolted, and the seat began to sway violently. I gripped the bar, my knuckles turning white. The wind picked up, howling around me as the sky darkened. I looked down and saw figures moving in the shadows below, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The wheel started to turn again, faster this time. The figures below began to climb the structure, their hands clawing at the metal. I tried to scream, but my voice was lost in the wind. The Ferris wheel spun faster and faster, the figures getting closer with each rotation. I could see them clearly now, pale, twisted faces with hollow eyes and mouths that stretched into impossible grins. They reached for me, their hands scraping against the metal seat as they climbed higher and higher. In a final, desperate attempt to escape, I unlatched the safety bar and prepared to jump. But before I could, the Ferris wheel made one last violent spin, and I was thrown from the seat, plummeting toward the ground. I expected to hit the earth, but instead I kept falling, the ground beneath me opening into a vast, endless void. The figures above watched as I descended into the darkness, their laughter echoing in my ears. I don't know how long I fell, but when I finally hit solid ground, I was no longer at the carnival. I was in a place of complete darkness, the air thick with a suffocating silence. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak, as though the fall had drained the life from me. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I realized I wasn't alone. The figures from the Ferris wheel were here too, surrounding me in the pitch black. Their eyes glowed faintly, and I could see their twisted grins, inches from my face. I tried to run, but they closed in, their cold hands gripping my arms, dragging me deeper into the darkness. I struggled, but it was useless. They pulled me through the shadows, their laughter growing louder, echoing in my mind until it was all I could hear. I was trapped in that place, where time didn't exist, where the only sound was their endless mocking laughter. The carnival, the Ferris wheel, my life, everything was gone, swallowed by the void. I was now a part of it, just another lost soul in the Ferris wheel of fear, forever spinning in the dark.